This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all of a couple of things. First, please subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app or website you are listening to this on. To do that, you can just go to our homepage and hit the subscribe button. If you're on Apple Podcasts, it'll be in the top right-hand corner with next to that plus sign that says subscribe. You want to subscribe to the podcast for a couple of reasons, but the main one being you get those alerts and those notifications on your phone, on your laptop, on your watch, on whatever you may be listening to this episode on, and you can always know when we drop a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast here at the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, please subscribe to the podcast so you can get those alerts and notifications, and that way you can never miss an episode and be one of the first people to listen to a new episode when we release it. Again, please subscribe to the podcast. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review on that same podcasting app or website on that same device. Just to give us a boost of confidence, to let us know that you guys are enjoying the content and discussion points and the structure of the show. And if you are, again, we would really appreciate it if you leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general on that same Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Podbean, whatever you might be listening to this on. Again, same thing, just go to the homepage and click leave a review. That would give us a big boost of confidence. Again, it would let us know that you guys are enjoying the structure of the show and everything about it. So that would be awesome if you could. And finally, if you could follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us. Over there, we can interact and pretty much talk about anything over on social media. We can talk about sports. We can talk about life. We're going to do some live tweeting of some big-time hockey games or baseball games when the season starts. Whatever it may be, all of those interaction needs can be found on social media. So again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us, and we would love if you could do so. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and healthy during these extremely trying times in the world today. We have a fantastic show for you all today. Coming up at the end of today's episode, I want to break down 2 NBA trades that 2 big-time contenders made to bolster up their three-point shooting and their roster overall. The Milwaukee Bucks traded for former Houston Rocket forward PJ Tucker, while the Miami Heat actually traded to Oklahoma City some draft rights and Myers Leonard for Trevor Ariza, who was away with the team, who's another 3-and-D veteran. So we'll get into those 2 teams and how that bolsters their championship odds at the end of the episode. Also later on in the show, I want to get to Curtis Samuel signing with the Washington football team, where Kenny Golladay might end up going, and what are the Miami Dolphins doing with their money, considering they have surprisingly not really signed any big-name free agent, very un-Miami Dolphin-like. We'll break that down later on in the show. And I want to tell you why the Arizona Cardinals are a major Super Bowl contender next year, and they're going all in on Kyler Murray's cheap contract. That's also coming up later on in the show. But of course, we're going to start off with who I believe won at least day one of free agency. Now, you got to keep in mind there's a lot of days left, a lot of top talent still out there. In the wide receiver department in particular, Kenny Golladay, while it looks like he might go to the Giants on a visit, is still unsigned. Juju Smith-Schuster, T.Y. Hilton, Will Fuller. A lot of guys still out there. Chris Carson, the running back, still out there. There's a lot of guys who are high-profile free agents that are still out there, not to mention guys available via trade. So the offseason's really just starting, and the first wave of free agency hasn't even really ended yet until some of those receivers get signed. The only major ones to get signed so far are Curtis Samuel, Nelson Aguilar right now. Still waiting for those top dogs like Juju Smith-Schuster and Kenny Golladay to sign. But I think the New England Patriots, I think we can all agree, won and was definitely the most surprising start to free agency. And I think they won day one of free agency. They had a flurry of moves, spending money on guys like Devon Godchaux, a D tackle, bringing back some of their own players. But mainly they signed two big-time tight ends, Hunter Henry, and sort of offensive weapon / tight end, Jonnu Smith. Now, I want to explain why I believe that these were great moves for the New England Patriots, but I don't necessarily see them as a contender. You see, I'll start off with the moves first. Before I get into how I think New England will be next season, again, free agency is not over. New England still has money. They can spend more money if they want to. A lot of teams like the Jaguars, the Dolphins, went into free agency with a decent amount of money and haven't spent all of that yet. So again, many moves to be made still in free agency. But the New England Patriots came out and immediately signed two big-name tight ends. Again, they had the worst tight end group of, they're pretty much the entire NFL last year, lowest in touchdowns, receptions, and yards. So they go out there and they spend on two major tight ends. Now, I'll be honest with you, Hunter Henry was a name that was always going to be linked to the Patriots. Bill Belichick is a family friend of his, and it was almost not expected, but there was some rumors that he was going to go sign there. The addition of Jonnu Smith is the one that really surprised me. So Jonnu Smith, if you don't know, is a tight end for the Tennessee Titans. He's really athletic. A guy who's coming out of the draft that I compare a lot to Jonnu Smith is Brevin Jordan. If you remember in my last episode, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, I told you that I think Brevin Jordan is a taller version of Deebo Samuel. And to be honest with you, that is where, I see Jonnu Smith. He's a taller Deebo Samuel. He's obviously older, but again, he's more than just a tight end. He's more athletic. Hunter Henry is your traditional tight end, size and speed-wise mismatch. He's built more like Gronk. Jonnu Smith is skinnier. He's faster. He can come out of the backfield. You can do even some screen passes with him. He is excellent in run after the catch, which is something that New England really struggled with last season. Didn't have a lot of playmakers on the outside. They add those two tight ends. They add Nelson Aguilar, who's a pure speed guy, was pretty bad in Philly, obviously notorious for all the drops he had. Went to a stacked Raiders offense last year, showed out, was considered one of the better deep threats of the year last year. I think it was a little bit of an overpay for Nelson Aguilar for New England, considering he got more than Curtis Samuel, but New England had absolutely no over-the-top threat at all last year. Now they bring in Nelson Aguilar, who I think right now would be the best wide receiver on that team, not named Julian Edelman. I'm kind of uncertain what his health is at right now. But again, you bring in those two tight ends, Hunter Henry, who's obviously athletic enough to be a starting tight end, and he's a receiving tight end. Jonnu Smith, who's an uber-athletic tight end. Nelson Aguilar, a pure speed guy. Some depth on the defensive side. The only issue with the New England Patriots offense right now is it looks like they're losing their best two offensive linemen. So Joe Thuney has already signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, who I will also talk about later on in this episode. And David Andrews, it's looking like is not going to be coming back to the Patriots. There's been teams like Miami potentially interested in him. Big-time center from New England. Has been there forever. I believe he's a captain. Those two losses sting for sure, but the number one difficulty that New England had last year was moving the ball, and they needed to get their weapons. And it's a time Bill Belichick trusts himself with the drafting of offensive linemen and not the drafting of skill positions. We know that Bill Belichick's kryptonite has appeared to be drafting skill positions in the draft. They took two tight ends last year in the draft. Devin Asiasi and the kid from University of Cincinnati. Both of them turned out to be not such great players, and they automatically gave up on them and signed two big-time free agents. Asiasi's really never going to see the field again. N'Keal Harry was drafted in the first round of that same draft. They're looking to move on from him. San Francisco's been a team that they talked to about that. So again, that's his kryptonite. If there's one thing that Bill Belichick can do, it's coach up defense and always draft offensive linemen well. If there's one thing he can't, it's really draft skill positions. So he's decided to spend that money on those skill positions. I think New England might have gone from the worst tight end group in the world to the best. We know Josh McDaniels loves, and the Patriots as well, loves running two tight end sets. They did it with Gronk and Hernandez years ago. I just have one issue with the New England Patriots, and that's their quarterback. I think they've absolutely nailed this offseason so far. They kept to their word when they said they were going to be aggressive. Again, there was the early reports that New England was going to be aggressive for a receiver, maybe Galladay, maybe blah, blah, blah. I never really fully bought into that. It's not the Patriot way to spend all of this money. It's always, you budget, get rid of guys a year early before it's a year too late, and things like that. But they actually go out there and they spend a ton of money on skill positions. I was shocked when I saw the Hunter Henry signing after they signed Jonnu Smith. I didn't think they would get both of those guys, but again, absolutely huge upgrade for whoever the quarterback is going to be there going forward, and it looks like it's going to be Cam Newton next year, and that is my biggest problem with the New England Patriots. You see, because having all of these great and new offensive weapons like Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, and you already know that they're going to be beasts in the two tight end system because New England has always, really dominated with the two tight end system. Whenever they have the talent at that position, they've been absolute studs. But my issue is the guy getting the ball. Cam Newton had one of the worst passing seasons since the 1930s last year. He was the first quarterback since the 1930s to start 15-plus games for an NFL team and not throw double-digit touchdowns in a season. He only threw 8. And I understand that at this stage of his career, it was nice for him to just, run for those 10 touchdowns like he did a year ago. But again, when you're a better runner than a passer, and that's just what Cam Newton is at this point, a better runner than a passer, you're not going to be able to win a lot of football games. And if New England, who clearly now wants to air out the ball, last year they were all about, smash you in the mouth, run the ball up the middle, and all that stuff, they've completely abandoned that this offseason. David Andrews is going to be gone. Joe Thuney is already gone. And now you've brought in some speed guys like Nelson Aguilar and Jonnu Smith, and then you also add Hunter Henry at the tight end position. The Patriots want to throw the ball, not run the ball. Cam Newton's body and where he's at his career, he struggles to throw the ball. Again, if this team had Jimmy Garoppolo right now, I would tell you that they could win the division. I really do believe that. I love the offensive moves that they've made. Again, I think Jonnu Smith, again, if here's the thing, I'm no fantasy expert, but if Hunter Henry wasn't on the New England Patriots, I would tell you that Jonnu Smith is the third best fantasy tight end in the league. I think Jonnu Smith is going to make a leap next year into the that top 10 tight end in the NFL range if he's not there already. Again, uber athletic, can get the jump ball, can really create space. The thing with tight ends that you love this year, tight ends who can create space. Rob Gronkowski wasn't necessarily the greatest at creating space, but he caught every jump ball because he was a complete physical freak. Guys like Travis Kelce and Jonnu Smith, I'm not putting them on the same level, obviously, but again, those speed, not necessarily physical tight ends, more speed guys, can really become your security blanket, can really always get open. And that's what Cam Newton will need, a guy who can always get open. But can he get in the ball? That's the question. Now, here's what I believe the Patriots are doing personally. I think Cam Newton was brought back as an insurance policy to compete with another quarterback. I have a hard time believing that the New England Patriots would see what they saw on Cam Newton last year and not at least give Cam competition, not look somewhere else. A name that comes to mind for me, because again, I don't think they're picking a quarterback in the first round. I know a lot of people have them taking Mac Jones at 15. I think the Patriots should still go receiver. They still don't have a true number one receiver yet. Nelson Aguilar is a nice addition. Nobody considers him to be a number one receiver in this league. Rashad Bateman's a guy I look at for the New England Patriots at 15 who I would love to see there. So let's say they take Rashad Bateman at 15, who I believe could be a special receiver in this league and could absolutely develop into a top guy in the NFL. But will they really, not bringing competition for Cam? Look at a guy like Kellen Mond, winner of the Senior Bowl, MVP, Texas A&M quarterback, led them to 5th in the country, has all the traits, has the IQ, little bit of a project, can move a little bit, nice arm, nice release, nice form, very technically sound. I'd love to see the Patriots go after him in the second round and have him compete with Cam Newton. Maybe let Cam test the waters for a little bit the first weeks of the year and then give it to Kellen Mond. Now, if the Patriots got a guy like Kellen Mond with that coaching, with that system, and now with those weapons, assuming they draft a receiver or something like that at 15, then New England is really putting a team together that can compete very, very soon. Now, we see teams after going off incredible runs and dynasties go through a complete rebuild and are bad for years and years to come. The Miami Dolphins are still not over Dan Marino. The Chicago Bears are still not good since Ditka left, obviously. There's a lot of teams. The New York Jets haven't done anything since Joe Namath left, right? Teams have fall apart after their top success. New England might not be one of those teams. New England and Bill Belichick might be one of those teams, like Golden State. Takes a year off and then boom, they're right back in the playoff race. That's where I think New England is positioning themselves to go right now, except for the fact that they don't have an adequate quarterback. And I'm not sure that they do. I can't. A lot of people, which is nuts to me, have seemed to have forgotten what Cam Newton did last year since these signings. It's just because you get weapons doesn't necessarily mean your quarterback's going to elevate to that level. It's a two-way street. While yes, the Patriots do need to surround Cam Newton with better weapons, and no, the wide receiving core was not great at all last year, Cam Newton also has to play better. When those receivers were getting open last year, he was hitting guys in the feet consistently. Again, Cam with multiple surgeries on that foot, multiple surgeries on his throwing shoulder, has a weird and now awkward kind of motion where it looks like he's throwing every ounce of his body to whip a ball 15 yards. Nelson Aguilar isn't brought into New England to catch 15-yard passes. He's brought into New England to catch 30-yard-plus bust passes, the deep threats, the streaks, the posts, the flag routes, all that stuff. And if Cam Newton can't give you that, how many deep balls did Cam Newton complete last year? Maybe 10? Maybe if we're being lucky. And again, no deep ball touchdowns. We only know he only threw 8 last year. So again, there's no confidence, at least for me and my standpoint, of why I should believe in Cam Newton to get that ball to Nelson Aguilar or Jonnu Smith 13 to 15 yards downfield and hit him with space and hit him in stride. Because again, guys like Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar, you want to hit them in stride because they can do so much after the catch. Cam Newton hasn't been accurate in a couple of years. Hasn't really thrown with great anticipation the last couple of years. Again, it looks like a guy who, unfortunately, because of how bad the Carolina Panthers were for a couple of years, took an absolute beating for that team and that organization week in and week out, and now it's taking tolls on him when he's just only 30 years old. This is a reason why Deshaun Watson potentially wants to get out of Houston. He doesn't want the same thing to happen. He doesn't want to take brutal hits for a bad team so that when he turns 30, his body is breaking down like we see what's happening to Cam Newton. Again, I highly doubt that there's not going to be competition brought in for Cam. Keep an eye on like Kellen Mond in the second round, high cerebral guy coming from a Jimbo Fisher system at Texas A&M, brought them to 5th in the country. Some argued that they should have made the college football playoff over Notre Dame. Again, high IQ guy, has all the tools. I think he's a little project, maybe a year away. I could have seen him staying in school another year, but if the Patriots get his hands on him in the second round, I think it would be a really nice addition for them. And then a guy who can push down the field like Kellen Mond. Again, maybe not start him right out of the gate, but give him some time to develop, and then I could see the Patriots contending sooner rather than later. But until they get that quarterback position figured out, not to mention the offensive line issues now. Again, no center on the roster. They replaced David Andrews with Ted Karras, who didn't have a great season in Miami last year. Again, it's unclear who they're going to throw in at guard and replace him with Tooney. So again, the offensive line is deteriorating while the weapons went up. I don't know if Cam Newton's going to get the ball to those receivers with even less time than he had last year. What do you think's your take on the Cam Newton situation? Again, I think we can all agree that we liked those Patriot moves. You can argue that they overpaid or that it was a little too much money on the Jonnu Smith contract, or a lot of people were saying it was too much money on the Nelson Aguilar contract. But when you have this money in the NFL, you got to spend money to make money, essentially. You're going to have to overpay to convince a team, a guy to come to a team that isn't necessarily great, that has a weird quarterback situation, that isn't coming off the greatest year, that maybe just let the greatest quarterback of all time walk out their front door. So again, New England was going to have to overpay to convince guys to come into cold New England, no fun zone, put in the work without Tom Brady. They were going to have to overpay a little bit, and that's what they did. Again, I give a lot of their signings, I think the Jonnu Smith signing, A+, Hunter Henry, A+. I think Godchow is definitely a serviceable defensive tackle. I think Nelson Aguilar, I think they overpaid a little bit, but he definitely serves a need that they absolutely need, which is a deep ball threat. But again, I don't know if I trust Cam Newton to get this team to 11 wins. Right now it feels like an 8-8, 9-17 to me. But if they had a guy like Jimmy G, if Deshaun Watson gets traded to San Francisco, or somebody like that, then this team could really take off sooner rather than later. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this short break, I want to get into the Arizona Cardinals, who have made 3 major moves for high-profile veterans this offseason, why they're going all in on Kyler Murray, and why. We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you're a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my spiel about the New England Patriots. Really aggressive and I think awesome start for them of free agency. Again, I don't dispute any of the moves they've made. I think they've all been great free agency moves. Bill Belichick has been maneuvering the cap really, really well, making sure bringing in positions of need specifically on offense like tight end and speed receiver. Again, I just don't have a lot of faith in their quarterback Cam Newton to get those incredible and amazing weapons the ball. Okay, I want to shift focus here now into the Arizona Cardinals, who I believe were the quiet second place finishers of free agency, and it was honestly a bunch of moves that nobody really expected for them, and they really are going all in on Kyler Murray. So the Arizona Cardinals obviously already signed J.J. Watt when he was released from the Houston Texans, but they have made two more moves for some high-profile veterans, one of them being them signing A.J. Green to, I believe, a one-year contract, and they also traded for Raiders center Rodney Hudson, who might be just the best center in football if you want to look at it from a standpoint. He's easily a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's an absolute mauler. And these were a lot of incredible moves for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, you can look at J.J. Watt and A.J. Green and say they were not the players they once were. Again, I think J.J. is closer to the player he once was than A.J. Green is. A.J. Green the last 2 years has been banged up, hurt, and he really didn't look that great last year when he even was healthy. But again, you bring him into a pass-happy offense that he really does a lot of spread and four wide, and he's going to get, A.J. Green matched up against your third, fourth best corner, because your number one corner's got to go guard. You already know who, DeAndre Hopkins. Your second best corner probably has to honestly go guard Christian Kirk because of his speed. Third guy in the slot, I think A.J. Green can do a lot of work out of the slot for the Arizona Cardinals as almost a tall slot guy. And I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to have a lot of fun with him. And again, bringing in a guy like Rodney Hudson, who is a major center in this league. Again, you could argue he's the best. I'd put him up there with Corey Lindsey, who obviously just became the highest paid center in the league. He's now with the Chargers. David Andrews of the New England Patriots is going to get probably a decent amount of money from a team like the Miami Dolphins or something like that. Rodney Hudson is a major player for this offense now in Arizona. If they can get the running back situation figured out, maybe via the draft, maybe via free agency, because again, running backs are coming by the really cheap dollar price right now. Again, the COVID cap year has been brutal to these guys. A lot of veterans have been getting cut. We saw guys like, Kyle Van Noy get cut and some of these other surprise veterans. Rodney Hudson was actually supposed to get cut, but after the outrage, teams started to call and tried to trade for him before he could get cut, and Arizona obviously did that. But same thing for the wide receiver and running back market. The market is so low for these guys. The price tag is so low. You get guys like Curtis Samuel, who, breaking news, it's really while I'm recording, I can see it on my phone right now. He just signed with the Washington football team. I'll get to that later on in the show, what it looks like for that offense. But again, only at $11 million a year. That's not a huge chunk of change for guys at skill positions who are needed. And you have to go back and look at the draft because of that, obviously, how deep the running back class is this year and the wide receiver class. But for Arizona to go out there and get a guy like Rodney Hudson, anchor him down as a center, if they could add a running back, this offense could really take off. We know that Kyler, I think, is a great quarterback in this league. You could argue he's already pushing top 10. We know DeAndre Hopkins is legit. We know Christian Kirk is fast. They need a tight end, and they needed a slot receiver. Because, again, Larry Fitzgerald is sort of unclear where his future stands. I think he obviously has a contract offer from the Arizona Cardinals to come back, but it wouldn't surprise me if a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to go after him. Again, Kansas City Chiefs. Larry might want that one final ring before he retires, and, hey, he might do it with a different team. If that were the case, or not, even if Larry does come back, I think A.J. Green's a great fit with Arizona. And again, out of all the teams he could have gone to, I think this is the place where A.J. Green could really maximize his talent and get his career back on track and show that he's still a productive player in the league. We've seen guys like Le'Veon Bell go ring chase with Kansas City, not have a major role, and are sort of forgotten in today's NFL. There's been no rumors about him. Le'Veon Bell is a free agent, obviously, right now. But A.J. Green going to Arizona in the slot, could be a lot of nice moves. Could be sort of a security blanket for Kyler Murray. Not that the Kyler Murray needs a security blanket because obviously DeAndre Hopkins is there. But just as another guy to go to in the slot, again, each and every week, if you're telling me that your slot corner has to go up against A.J. Green, I really do believe that that's a good matchup for the Arizona. Probably, 14 out of the 17 weeks next year, or 13 out of the 17 weeks, and that's what you pay A.J. Green for. It was worth the money, and Hudson's going to boost your run game hugely. Kyler Murray, that offensive line has been brutal for years now. Bringing in Hudson to maybe coach up some of the young guys you're drafting, or maybe even signing some more people, it's going to be huge for Kyler Murray. Again, if the pocket does break down, Kyler does a great job of extending the play with his legs, so on and so forth. But again, he can only do that so many times. He already got injured last year. It wasn't a major injury, but it was definitely something that was lingering him for a couple of weeks and habited his ability to run. You don't want Kyler Murray, who's not the biggest guy in the world, obviously, taking massive shots from guys like Aaron Donald who play in your division. Rodney Hudson can take care of that problem for you. He's just a big man who pushes people around for a living. And again, first ballot Hall of Famer, complete dominant center, has been for the better part of the last 8 to 10 years. Surprise move by the Raiders to move off of him. Again, he's been the best player on the Raiders, you could say, for the past 10 to 15 years at this point. Not 15, but about 10 years. For him to go, and then for him to go to Arizona is huge for them. Now, if you take that into consideration, the A.J. Green move, the Hudson move, and of course the J.J. Watt move from a few weeks ago, the Arizona Cardinals are going all in. They thought they were close last year to making the playoffs. They considered that year 2 of their rebuild, and now they're here year 3 ready to contend. That's how it usually works in the NFL. Year 1 of your rebuild, you take your licks, you lose, you're going to get the high draft pick. Year 2, you got the rookie quarterback, you see what he can do. Year 3, you get all those weapons for the guy and everything like that. Now, they're entering year 3 of that process with Kyler Murray, while some other teams are entering year 2 with their young quarterbacks, or year 1 if you're the Jets or something like that. They believe it's time to start contending. It's time to start making the playoffs. I think they probably felt disrespected that the Bears made it over them. Again, they probably feel and really viewed themselves, and I think we all did, as the more fun team, the better team, the more exciting team than the Chicago Bears. So again, I will also talk about later on in this show. But for the Cardinals to go all in on Kyler Murray, they realized something. And like I talked about in my last episode, there is many ways to win in the National Football League, but the biggest way, and probably the most consistent way, is get your quarterback on the cheap, specifically when he's young, talented, ascending. Before you pay him the big contract, go on his weapons and get to a Super Bowl. A lot of teams have gotten there. The Rams got there with Jared Goff, so on and so forth, by doing that method. And then this is what the Cardinals do with Kyler Murray. They realize that they have a potential superstar quarterback on the cheap on a rookie deal for $4 or $5 million a year. They want to capitalize on that, so they're throwing the bag at A.J. Green. They're bringing in guys like J.J. Watt. They're making aggressive trades, like giving up a third-round pick for 31-year-old center Rodney Hudson, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. They're going all in on Kyler Murray because they believe he could lead them to a Super Bowl this year, not in the future. They're done with the Kyler developing. Kyler's going to improve as he gets older and things like that, but this is no longer a development standpoint. Kyler Murray is developed. He's ready to become a superstar. Now it's about surrounding him with the players that they need, getting him a better offensive line, which they've done. I'd like to see them add a running back. Again, I don't know how much money they have left. It's kind of unclear. Again, with all of these restructures and loopholes to the cap, it's really impossible, to be quite honest with you, to know exactly what number each and every team has in the cap space department. But if they could go look at a guy like a Chris Carson on the cheap, even if it's just a 1-year deal or something like that, even, hey, Le'Veon Bell, something like that, that would be absolutely huge. Get them a bell cow back, pair him with Chris Carson, or Chris Carson, pair him with Chase Edmonds, then I think you'd have a really nice thunder and lightning sort of partnership in the backfield. I mean, if you had Chris Carson running behind Rodney Hudson, I mean, you're talking about flattener after truck, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Again, that's just a rumor, pure speculation. I'd love to see it happen, but the Cardinals are clearly going all in on Kyler Murray, as they should. I think Kyler Murray has the potential to win an MVP in this league. I think he is a unique and special talent that I'm not sure the NFL has seen. Again, we saw a small quarterback in Drew Brees succeed. I think that Kyler Murray could be this generation's Drew Brees. He's small. He's undersized. It doesn't make sense. He's not supposed to be able to make it in this league, given his size and weight. Yet he could dominate. Yet he might win an MVP. Hell, he might even win a Super Bowl MVP. The Cardinals believe in him, just like I believe in him, and a lot of people and a lot of Cardinal fans believe in him. That's why they're going so aggressive after these free agent veterans. Guys like Hudson, guys like A.J. Green, guys like J.J. Watt. Again, Patrick Peterson had to get let go because of that, which is a shame. And again, they really don't play defense in Arizona. But hey, when you have that offense with Kyler Murray, with the electricity that it's going to bring, if they could add a running back and maybe even a tight end, I would absolutely love to see it for Arizona going forward. I think it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. And at the end of the day, I think the Cardinals have a really, really, really good chance at having a deep playoff run in the NFC. I think that their quarterback can stack up with anybody. When he looks at his best, I think Kyler Murray looks like a top 5 quarterback in the league. You watch those Seattle games last year with him versus Russell Wilson, going toe-to-toe with Russell Wilson, who in my opinion is an MVP caliber player, a Super Bowl champion, was really one throw away from beating the Patriots and becoming a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Again, Russell Wilson, who gets Steve Young comparisons and things like that. But at the end of the day, I really do believe that they think Kyler Murray can ascend to that level just like I do. And again, they're going all in on him. And it's good to see, because you love to see when young quarterbacks get the weapons that they want, have the team around them, and they can really start to ascend and get to their full potential. I think the Cardinals are going to be must-watch television next year, and it wouldn't surprise me if that wasn't the last move they made to help Kyler Murray. If they can improve their defense, that'd be nice too, but obviously with an offensive-minded head coach like Cliff Kingsbury running the spread offense, defense, unfortunately, is not going to be the main goal of the football team. It's going to be win games and score points, and that's what Kyler Murray is going to be able to do with Cliff Kingsbury this year, I believe, with all of these weapons. They just need a tight end and a running back, but hey, that could be what the draft is for. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this short break, I want to do some rapid fire on some of the bigger deals that have happened. We'll talk about the Bears getting Andy Dalton, why I don't necessarily agree with that move, and why I think Ryan Pace's job might already be gone before this season even started. I also want to talk about Washington and why I believe they will win the NFC East. And if we have time, we'll get to the Miami Dolphins, who walked in the NFL with $30 million of cap space and were expected to be aggressive in the free agent wide receiver market. No big name splash for the Miami Dolphins just yet. Who do I think they could be going after, and why? Coming up all after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my spiel on everything Arizona Cardinals. Again, because of Kyler Murray's cheap contract as of right now, again, in the next few years, they eventually will have to extend him and give him top dollar money. But they are capitalizing on the fact that he is costing them virtually nothing right now as a first-round quarterback on his rookie deal, making about $4 or $5 million a year. And I think that is the main reason why they are going all in on some of these older veteran free agents like A.J. Green and also Rodney Hudson, who they traded for about a third-round pick from the Raiders. Again, big moves from the Arizona Cardinals. I want to transition now, and for the rest of this segment, I just want to do a rapid fire, giving you my quick thoughts on some of the bigger moves that have been made so far. Again, I'm not going to get to all of them over the next sort of weeks over the show. Of course, more NFL news will be coming out, so I'll get to all of it eventually. But here are some of the bigger storylines that I definitely noticed going through free agency so far. The first one is that I believe that the Washington football team is going to win the NFC East next year, and I think they should be the heavy favorites. Again, I was kind of hinting at this, I think either in my last show or 2 shows ago, whichever one was the one about Dak getting paid. I told you that despite the fact of Dak Prescott getting paid top dollar to be the Dallas Cowboy quarterback, I wasn't entirely convinced that the Cowboys were going to win the division. Again, yes, that they have Dak Prescott as their quarterback, so no, they won't be as bad as they were last year. But still, at the end of the day, this team does not have a good defense, an aging offensive line, and there's a lot of question marks surrounding Ezekiel Elliott. I hate to say it. Is he in shape? How does he look? Is he hitting that running back cliff that we all know a majority of running backs hit once they reach a certain age because of the physicality of the game? There's a lot of questions, and sure, they're going to score points, and sure, it's going to look flashy, and sure, Dak's going to put up the stats, but I think the Washington football team have just made themselves the odds-on favorites to win the NFC East, and I think they could cause some trouble in the NFC overall. So let's start with their quarterback. There's been questions for weeks now on who the Washington football team was going to look at for their quarterback. Obviously, they have a top 10 defense in the NFL. I would even argue it's top 5. I would argue that they have a top 3 defensive line in the league. Ron Rivera is one of the better defensive coaches in the league, and once that Washington football team really bought in to Ron Rivera, his ways, his teachings, they took off, man. And you saw the team that gave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the most struggles in their playoff run, which eventually led to a Super Bowl victory, was Taylor Heineke and the Washington football team. The offense is all they needed. Their defense, in my opinion, you could argue is a championship caliber defense. It is that good of a defense. We know Ron Rivera is a good enough coach to get you to a Super Bowl. He did it in 2015 with Cam Newton and that Panther team. They needed offense. They have a stud wide receiver one in Terry McLaurin, who I think is the most underrated receiver in the league. He's an absolute speed demon. Obviously, with the running game that they have now behind their rookie is incredible as well. They have a decent offensive line. I think it could be improved a little bit, but hey, you're not going to be perfect at everything. But then they made 2 major free agent moves. They brought in quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick and wide receiver Curtis Samuel. Both moves that I absolutely love for this Washington football team. Let's get into it. So, I'll start with Curtis Samuel, because of course the Fitzmagic part is the more important part of the quarterback. Curtis Samuel is the Jonnu Smith of this wide receiver class, right? So Jonnu Smith is this versatile, athletic, incredible physical specimen, or tight end that a lot of people would say was underused in Tennessee, wasn't used to his max capabilities. Signs a big deal with the contract with the New England Patriots. Not necessarily, the Patriots aren't paying for his production with Tennessee. They're paying for the increased production that he's going to have with the Patriots. Curtis Samuel is a lot like that with this free agent wide receiver class. He isn't the flashiest name like Kenny Golladay or Juju Smith-Schuster, yet his value and potential might be the highest out of any of the receivers in this free agent class, maybe besides Kenny Golladay. His combination of speed and playmaking is second to maybe only Tyreek Hill. When you watch his highlights, they used him a lot in the backfield as sort of this running back wide receiver hybrid in creative ways. You got to remember that Carolina has an offense that is meant to spread the ball around with Teddy Bridgewater. And of course, they have Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, who are going to get the majority of those, those carries or catches, whatever it may be, depending on the position. And Curtis Samuel was really the odd man out of that group, which is the reason why they didn't pay him to bring him back. Only 24 years old, out of Ohio State, was college teammates with Terry McLaurin, and Terry actually tweeted out that they were talking about this in the dorm rooms back at Ohio State, potentially playing together. Now, I think this is a fantastic move. Not only is he a speed demon like Terry, they're very similar players. They do a lot with the run after the catch. And Curtis Samuel, man, if there was one word to describe him, it would just be a playmaker. You want to get the ball in that guy's hands, whether it's a deep threat, whether it's a shot play, whether it's even a screen. Hell, Carolina used to give him handoffs in the backfield as a running back, and he would have great vision. He's just a complete playmaker on all 4 phases of the game, and I really do believe that this was a great signing to pair him along Terry McLaurin, have 2 incredibly young, speedy receivers, and then you bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is the ultimate veteran, the ultimate team guy. Young guys fall in love with playing with him. We saw Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki, who's one of the younger players in this league. He's only 25 years old. Said that give this heartfelt message to Ryan Fitzpatrick. We know how the young Dolphins team responded to Ryan Fitzpatrick in the 2 years that he was there. They love to play for him. This is a young Washington football team. They need a leader. They need an adult in the room. That's why Alex Smith was so valuable to that team. But Ryan Fitzpatrick's a better quarterback at this stage of his career than Alex Smith. You could argue Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing the best years of football he is right now. Now, I know we all understand that when Fitzmagic comes, usually Fitztragic comes after that. But the last 2 years, there hasn't been a whole lot of Fitztragic. There's been some bad moments, but not these horrendous, game-blowing moments. And on top of all that, you have to remember that Fitzmagic wasn't a thing the entirety of Ryan Fitzpatrick's career. It wasn't only a thing until he really went to Tampa Bay and was killing it with that wide receiving group when Deshaun Jackson was there and he was still in his athletic prime. You just gave essentially Ryan Fitzpatrick two Deshaun Jackson-esque receivers with their speed. They're going to be dropping, Hail Mary-esque throws all day long on these teams. It's going to be a track meet. When you have that ability to take those shots, again, this is the perfect mix for the Washington football team. You have to understand. The reason why Ryan Fitzpatrick was able to work, to be honest with you, so well and so popularly in Miami was because he was allowed to take those risks and throw those interceptions and throw those deep balls and be aggressive and throw into tight windows because Miami had such a good defense that they could have gotten the ball back for you or caused a 3-and-out or get you extra possessions. You can afford to, throw an interception because Miami's going to come out there and they're going to stop it. Your defense is going to stop it. Washington has that same thing. So when you give Ryan Fitzpatrick his strengths, which is speed receivers that are going to get open down the field, forcing him to make those tight window throws and give them those deep balls. And if he does make those mistakes like Fitzmagic, which will eventually become Fitztragic, eventually will make, the defense can bail them out. And this defense will bail them out because they are a talented, young superstar defense. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what Ryan Fitzpatrick needs. Right now, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Washington football team won 11 games and won that division. And I really do believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick, if we got the Miami Dolphins and Tampa Bay Buccaneer Ryan Fitzpatrick, or a.k.a. Fitzmagic, I really do believe that Washington could take off. Not to a Super Bowl contender or anything like that. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with Ryan Fitzpatrick as your quarterback. But as a mentor to potentially a young guy in the second round or later in the first round, that would work as well too. I think it was a great all-around signing, and the Curtis Samuel thing takes it to another level for the Washington football team. I want to transition now to the Chicago Bears, who have now made another quarterback change. This time they have brought in Andy Dalton, who was the guy that they were also considering bringing in last year to compete with Mitch Trubisky, but instead they brought in Nick Foles. Now Trubisky is the one out, and he will be looking to sign with the new team. And now they're going to do a Foles versus Andy Dalton quarterback competition. Folks, this is horrible. And I feel bad for Chicago Bears fans because, to be quite honest with you, I think they have an incredible roster. I think they have a great coach in Matt Nagy. Again, I think Matt Nagy is a good coach. But to be honest with you, Ryan Pace might be the worst general manager in the league. Let me bring you back to Ryan Pace, his history with quarterbacks in the city of Chicago. He has brought in now 4 quarterbacks since his time as a general manager. When you were hired as the new GM of a team, your number one job usually is to get the quarterback position right. You attach your job, essentially, as a general manager to the quarterback you draft or bring in to win you games and eventually, hopefully, win you a Super Bowl. Ryan Pace has brought in 4 quarterbacks, I believe, since, 2017, since he's been brought in. In free agency, he signed Mike Glennon to a 3-year, $45 million contract and then traded up one spot to draft Mitchell Trubisky in 2017. The same year, he brought in those 2 guys. Years later, he then traded for Nick Foles, which was a 4th-round pick, and now he's signed Andy Dalton as a free agent for 1 year, $10 million. It's over. Ryan Pace should have been fired maybe 2 quarterbacks ago, and now he's gotten his 4th quarterback, and he didn't even pick the right one. Chicago found success when they got away from Nick Foles and gave it to Mitch Trubisky. I'm not saying that you need to bring Mitch Trubisky back and Chicago should run it back with Mitch Trubisky. Not at all. But I think Chicago should have been really looking at was a better version of Mitch Trubisky, a.k.a. a dual-threat athletic quarterback, which is why I thought they were so into Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, is because they realized, our quarterback needs to be athletic, be able to move, to run our system. We had 0 success with Nick Foles, who's a statue in the pocket, but we had more success and made the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky, a dual-threat guy. They just need to find a better version of Mitch Trubisky, somebody who could extend the play, run some bootlegs, run the play-action system well and run to the right, some escapability, but just have the better arm of Mitch Trubisky. So you could look at a guy like Marcus Mariota, you could go in the draft, you can do a couple of other different things, trade for Russell Wilson, but instead Ryan Pace makes the genius decision of bringing in Andy Dalton to a 1-year, $10 million deal. Andy Dalton was on a stacked offense last year, and he looked okay to pretty good, not bad. But in this offense with Chicago that doesn't have a ton of weapons to begin with, not to mention that it looks like they might be tagging and trading Allen Robinson potentially to Baltimore or something like that, Andy Dalton, who again is not a mobile guy, is a statue, and it looks like they're going to be losing Allen Robinson and he might not be playing there next year. I don't understand what the Bears and Ryan Pace are seeing in this move with Andy Dalton. Do they see a game manager? I knew they were interested in Alex Smith or something like that. Again, they needed a mobile guy. I thought that's why they were so into Watson and so into Russell Wilson. I really thought Chicago was going to bring in a guy like Marcus Mariota, somebody like that, some dual threat ability, somebody who can move, extend the pocket, extend the play, buy more times for your weapons to get open, or maybe run for a first down. Instead, they go with the red rifle Andy Dalton, who, in probably the most talented cast he's ever been surrounded on offense last year with the Dallas Cowboys, looked okay. And in my opinion, that's not what you need in a quarterback, not in the city of Chicago, which hasn't had a quarterback really in 70 years. And you have to feel for Bears fans because, again, they've gone from Mike Glennon to Mitch Trubisky to Nick Foles, and now they're at Andy Dalton. None of those guys are even close to franchise quarterbacks. And again, when you have a general manager in football who realizes that, hey, if I don't win this year, I'm fired, they're not going to care about drafting a rookie and developing or the future of the franchise or anything like that. They just want to preserve their job. They want to win, and they want to win now. And they believed Andy Dalton's going to give them the best chance to get back to the playoffs next year in Chicago. And I disagree with them. I'm not too sure about that. The final thing I want to talk about in this segment, actually I'll talk about two things. One of them being the Kansas City Chiefs have signed two major guards. You could argue two of the top 10 guards in the league, maybe even top 5. One of them being Joe Thuney to a 5-year, $80 million contract. They nab him away from the New England Patriots in what was maybe the more underrated and not talked about signs of the day. I mean, you could argue, I think you could say really that Joe Thuney is the second best guard in football, only behind probably Quentin Nelson, and now he's playing on the best offense in the league with the best quarterback in the league and the best offensive mind in the league. Only good things can happen there. But not only that, Kyle Long, who's probably close to a Hall of Fame, if not definitely a Hall of Fame guard, coming out of Chicago, has been retired for about a year or two, and now he's back, and he's signed with the Kansas City Chiefs on a 1-year, $5 million deal. So you're now talking about a team that's going to want to run it up the gut potentially a lot more than they have in the past. But again, not that I necessarily disagree with the signings. If the players weren't so good, I would. But again, I don't understand Kansas City going after guards instead of tackles, considering what happened in the Super Bowl, and they cut both of their starting tackles. So I would thought they'd be aggressive in the tackle market in free agency. Instead, they go with the guards. Now, the guards are good, don't get me wrong. Kyle Long and Joe Thuney, you could argue, are two of the top 7 guards in the NFL. But the tackle position is going to be interesting to watch with Kansas City going forward. If they're going to maybe shift their focus to the draft and maybe trade up or something like that, wouldn't surprise me at all, because they need a new left and right tackle unless they're going to go with a backup or something like that and promote from within. So that's going to be interesting to see. And the final thing is what are the Miami Dolphins doing? A lot of teams, a lot of people expecting the Miami Dolphins to be aggressive in the free agent market, going after wide receivers, going after weapons for Tua. They have done none of that. They've really just scraped around the edges. They made that trade for Bernard McKinney, and they've really just bring in some depth guys. Lawrence Guy was a name they brought in. They need a center because their center Ted Karras signed with the New England Patriots, so they will have a new center next year. In my opinion, Miami is holding out for something. I don't know what it is. They're either holding out for a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster and David Andrews, maybe Kenny Golladay, but he's taking a visit with the Giants, so that's looking likely there. Or, like some people have speculated, they're not spending any money because they need to save the cap space for their run at Deshaun Watson. Now, that is an interesting theory. However, I think they are going to build around Tua Tagovailoa. They did sign Jacoby Brissett to be the backup. I think he was there to be a backup for Tua Tagovailoa. I think if I had to guess, Miami hasn't spent their money yet because the guys they've offered the contracts to just haven't accepted them yet. Looking like David Andrews, Juju Smith-Schuster, I could expect both of those guys to be a Dolphin. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But if those guys go unsigned, for example, if Juju Smith-Schuster signs with the Raiders and David Andrews signs with, the Giants or somebody else, then you have to start wondering, what is Miami saving the money for? They cut Kyle Van Noy to save some money. They're apparently restructuring some contracts like Bernard McKinney to save some money. What are they saving the money for? There has to be somebody they're going after. Maybe it's Deshaun Watson. Who knows? All right, we're going to take one final short break here. On the other side of this final short break, I want to break down 2 NBA trades that happened today. PJ Tucker getting traded to Milwaukee and Trevor Ariza getting traded to the Miami Heat. I want to break all that good stuff down, and I want to talk about LaMarcus Aldridge and where I believe his most likely destination is as well, coming up all right after this final short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the final segment of today's absolutely packed NFL free agency sort of special show. But for the last segment of today's show, I do want to switch gears here to the NBA because we had two major trades go down. Not for any superstars, but two teams who are in contention for the Eastern Conference. Definitely made some upgrades at the forward position. Let's start off with the Milwaukee Bucks, who traded for Houston Rockets forward PJ Tucker, who's been away from the team for the last couple of weeks as they were seeking a trade for him. They got some picks back, made a couple of player swaps, including DJ Augustine. But the main part of the trade is that they do, in fact, land PJ Tucker. A team in the Miami Heat apparently had a lot of interest in him before that trade went down. And according to Kendrick Perkins, he was either going to Milwaukee or Miami. And Perkins said that he got that call from PJ Tucker about 6 hours before the trade actually went down, ended up going to Milwaukee. I understood why Miami was interested. Maybe I'm missing something here. I'm not entirely sure why Milwaukee was so in on a guy like PJ Tucker, unless they want him to maybe play the 3. I understand that he's 6'6", so he would fit in that height range, but I'm not sure. He's a little bit on the bigger side for a 3. He traditionally plays a 4 and maybe a small ball 5. He's a really good corner 3 specialist. Again, I would assume he's coming off the bench from this Milwaukee team, not starting, because again, they have Giannis really starting at the 4, Middleton starting at the 3, and then of course Brook Lopez, the 3-point shooting big man, starting at the 5. So unless they're bumping everybody up a slot, meaning maybe Giannis at the 3 or 4, PJ Tucker at the 3 or 4, Middleton at the 2, Holiday at the 1. Again, I could see it. It seems like a big, clunky lineup to me. Seems like a slow lineup to me. So I would expect PJ Tucker to come off the bench. I understood why the Miami Heat would be interested. They're looking for a big man next to Bam. Again, I didn't see it in Milwaukee, but either way, PJ Tucker's a really great 3-and-D defender. They'll find some way to use him, whether it's starting or off the bench. He's going to help the Milwaukee Bucks in any way that he can. I don't know if it's a starter off the bench, but whatever role he does find himself in, again, great corner 3-point specialist, as well as a great perimeter defender. And he's a pretty good paint defender as well. He's a pretty great offensive rebounder and defensive rebounder, given his size too. He's scrappy, tough, and physical. I think it's a great trade for the Milwaukee Bucks. Just didn't necessarily understand the fit, but hey, maybe we'll see in the next upcoming Bucks game where they decide to fit PJ Tucker. And also, the Heat traded Myers Leonard in a 2027 second-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder for 3-and-D player Trevor Ariza. Now, this one was interesting to me because he's been away from the team also all year, similar to PJ Tucker, has been out of basketball for a year. Eric Spoelstra described the move similar to when they traded for Andre Iguodala about a year ago as well. I don't know if it'll be that much of an impact. Andre Iguodala is one of the better perimeter defenders in the league, decent 3-point shooter. I think Ariza is a better shooter than Iguodala. I'm not sure if he's a better defender. Either way, a little bit of a yin and yang between those two can't hurt anybody, and they definitely needed the Heat to get some more shooting. I could totally see them throwing Ariza out there in certain lineups with Butler and Bam, and having Bam sort of play a little bit of a small ball role there. I know that they're still looking for a traditional big like LaMarcus Aldridge, who I'll talk about in a second here, but at the end of the day, I think Trevor Ariza was a great move for the Heat. They pride themselves on their 3-point shooting. Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Kelly Olynyk, of course, Goran Dragic. Now you add another one in Trevor Ariza, who's one of the better 3-point shooters in the league, specifically from the corner. But I don't think the Heat are done making moves. Keep an eye on Victor Oladipo, who's been rumored to go to Miami forever. I'm not sure if that deal will ever actually get done until next year's free agency. But definitely keep an eye on LaMarcus Aldridge and Rudy Gay from the Miami Heat. Both of those guys from the San Antonio Spurs have been rumored to get traded to the Heat. Again, the Heat are looking for a 4 to play next to Bam. They're not completely satisfied with that 4-spot position of Okpala starting right now, but it's really Olynyk as the other big that comes off the bench. If they could add a guy like Rudy Gay or LaMarcus Aldridge, that would put the Heat in serious contention. Right now, I think Brooklyn's the best team in the East when fully healthy and KD and the whole trio is playing. But that battle for second place between Philly, Miami, and them, and it really it comes down to those three. And at the end of the day, I think the Nets are going to probably be the best team in the East again. But that second spot between Philly, Milwaukee, and Miami is definitely going to be tough for the long run. Even if the seeding works out however way it is, any team, I would take Miami to beat Milwaukee or Milwaukee to beat Miami. It's going to be close either way no matter how the seeding finishes. I wouldn't buy too much in the seeding. Besides, I think we all agree Brooklyn's the best team in the East. It's going to be a fun time to see. The NBA trading deadline is a little under a month away. I believe it's either at the end of this month or the beginning of April, and then that's when we'll get to know, will LaMarcus Aldridge be traded? Will Victor Oladipo be traded? Some of these other guys on the market to some contention teams. and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Another team that you should keep an eye on to make the move is the Boston Celtics. Right now, they're 5th in the Eastern Conference. They're 20-20. They're a 500 team. They have a worse record right now than the Charlotte Hornets, but I don't think it's something Danny Ainge expected. Danny Ainge, a guy who has always not been aggressive, like I talked about on this show before, and has always hoarded his draft picks, needs to make a move. Miles Turner, somebody. There needs to be a big shakeup with this Boston team. Otherwise, I could see somebody losing their job at the end of this year. Maybe even both Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general. We would appreciate it if you would do all 3 of those things. Again, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I've been your host, Alex Masfer, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.